The throne hall of Nerethus glowed with the gold of dying suns, its columns carved from starlit stone, its air heavy with silence. 1,000 alien eyes followed as the human entered, slow, unarmed, his boots echoing across the polished floor like defiance given form. The alien court stood in rows on either side, statuesque and still, their pale blue skin glinting in the light of the suspended plasma chandeliers. At the far end, beneath the crest of her empire, the queen waited. Her gaze was a weapon sharper than any blade. Her name was Queen Aurelice of the Zyrian Dominion, ruler of 12 systems, heir to the line that once broke empires and forged them again in the dark. Her armor shimmered with the hues of Mercury and midnight, and her crown, alive with bioluminescent threads, framed a face both cruel and beautiful. Her lips did not move when the herald announced the human's name, nor when the soldiers parted to let him approach. She simply watched, unmoving, as though his presence was a faint irritation she would soon erase. Captain Elias Ward of Terra. The herald's voice boomed, envoy of the Earth Coalition. The sound of his title felt small here, swallowed by grandeur. Elias stopped 10 paces from her throne and bowed, not as subject to ruler, but as soldier to soldier. Your Majesty. His voice was low but steady, the kind that belonged to someone who'd stood in storms and learned not to flinch. The queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. You stand before me without guards, she said at last, her voice soft, melodic, yet edged with iron. Without armor, without fear. Do humans no longer value survival? We value truth more, Elias said. Sometimes the two don't agree. The murmur that rippled through the court was sharp as a hiss. The queen raised a hand and the sound died. You speak boldly, she said. Boldness from your kind has cost my people 3 worlds. Elias's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time we start speaking instead of shooting. The queen rose. The motion drew every gaze to her, the room seeming to bow with her movement. You believe you can negotiate peace, she said. But you come from a world that broke its own treaties before the ink was dry. Maybe that's why I'm here, he said. To stop the pattern. Her eyes narrowed, pupils contracting into thin silver slits. You think you can stop history? No, he said quietly. But I can start something else. She descended the steps slowly, her gaze locked on him. The guards stirred, but she waved them off. Her boots made no sound as she crossed the floor. When she stood before him, she seemed both smaller and infinitely larger. Her voice softened. Do you know who I am, human? Everyone in the galaxy knows who you are, he said. Queen Aurelice, conqueror of arrows, the flame of Zyr. Her smile was cold. Then you should also know that I do not grant audience to my enemies. Then maybe I'm not your enemy, he said. She stared at him for a long moment, as if searching for something. Then she turned away, her tone dismissive. You are not the first human to come here with words of peace. They all left in silence. Elias didn't move. Maybe they didn't say what needed saying. And you believe you will? She asked, not turning back. I have to, he said, because I was there when it began. That made her stop. Slowly, she turned, her gaze sharp as light through crystal. Where? The first contact on Virith Prime, he said. When the shooting started. Lies, she said, though her voice trembled faintly. Virith was lost to plague before your kind ever set foot there. No, Elias said softly. It wasn't plague. It was panic. We didn't understand your people then. We thought you were a threat. Her eyes flared, luminous and cold. We were defending our colony. You brought fire from the sky. Because we were afraid, he said. And I was the one who gave the order. The court gasped. Every guard in the hall drew their weapons in unison. Elias didn't flinch. I killed your soldiers, he said quietly. Your people. Your kin. I thought I was saving mine. The queen's expression shattered. Shock, fury, disbelief flashing in sequence. You dare confess that here? You deserve the truth, he said. Even if it kills me. She stepped closer, So close he could see the faint luminescent veins beneath her skin, the slight tremor in her jaw. "Do you come to beg forgiveness?" she whispered. "No," he said. "I came because I saw something that day. A child, your child, maybe trying to pull her mother from the rubble. And when she looked up, I saw your eyes." Her breath caught. The world seemed to still. "My eyes?" Elias nodded slowly. "You wore the same insignia she did. I didn't forget them. Those silver rings, the same pattern in the iris. I saw them again when your name appeared on the truce broadcast years later." The Queen's composure fractured completely. Her hands trembled as she reached up to touch her face, as if confirming what he said. "That child," she whispered. "You remember her?" "Every day," he said. For a moment, no one in the court moved. Even the air felt held between heartbeats. Then, quietly, she said, "At first I did not recognize you. But now—" Her eyes locked with his, and in them memory bloomed like a wound reopened. The cold mask fell away. "Now I see." She stepped closer, her expression shifting from rage to something more fragile. "You were there," she said, her voice barely audible. "You stood in the smoke. You saw my daughter die." Elias's throat tightened. "Yes." She stared at him for a long, unbearable moment. The guards around them hesitated, waiting for a command. When she finally spoke, her voice was a blade drawn too slowly. "Why?" "Because we thought you were monsters," he said. "Because someone had to make the first mistake." Her hand rose, trembling, stopping inches from his face. He didn't move. The hall was utterly silent. Then her fingers touched his cheek. "And now?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Now I think we were wrong." Something inside her seemed to break. She turned away abruptly, her voice sharp and brittle. "Guards, leave us." The soldiers hesitated. She snapped, "Now." One by one, they withdrew until the great doors closed with a thunderous echo. She stood facing the empty throne, her shoulders rigid. "You should not have come here," she said. "You should have stayed among your kind and your guilt." "I couldn't," he said. "Not when I saw what your people rebuilt from the ashes we left. I had to see if you remembered too." Her laugh was soft and bitter. "Remember? I remember every fire, every scream. I remember the sky burning red and the sound of human machines tearing through our cities." She turned, her eyes gleaming. "And now the man who lit that fire stands before me asking for what? Mercy?" "No," he said. "Understanding." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And what will that change?" "Maybe nothing," he said. "But if it's nothing, at least it'll be honest." She stared at him again, longer this time, her anger folding into something heavier, grief, recognition, the ache of a wound that time had refused to close. "You carry their deaths with you," she said finally. "Like armor." "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes, the only way to carry pain is to turn it into purpose." For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Purpose," she repeated quietly. "You think peace can be born from confession?" "No," he said, "but maybe it can start there." The silence stretched. The light from the chandeliers dimmed slightly as the power shifted through the citadel's veins. The Queen took a deep breath. "You have spoken your truth, Captain Ward. For that, I will not have you executed." He nodded once. "That's generous." "Do not mistake it for forgiveness," she said sharply. He almost smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." She studied him again, her voice softer. "You remind me of someone I once knew." "Who?" he asked. "A man who believed he could stop a war by standing between armies." "What happened to him?" he asked. "He was crushed," she said simply. He looked at her, then at the throne behind her, its golden frame etched with ancient runes. "Then maybe it's time someone tried again." Her expression shifted once more, somewhere between disbelief and reluctant admiration. "You are either the bravest fool I've ever met," she said, "or the most dangerous." "Maybe both," he said. The faintest smile ghosted across her lips before she turned away again. "We shall see." She walked back toward the throne, her silhouette outlined by the flicker of plasma light. You will remain here until I decide what to do with you. Perhaps I will test your peace, human. Perhaps I will see if you can survive it. Elias nodded. I'll be here. She paused at the top of the dais, her back still turned to him. Tell me, she said quietly, when you saw her eyes, my daughter's eyes, did you think they were human? He hesitated, then said softly, I thought they were kind. The queen closed her eyes. For the first time in centuries, the ruler of 12 systems did not know what to say. Outside, the twin suns of Nerethus sank below the horizon, casting long shadows through the hall. And though neither of them spoke again, both knew that something had shifted, a bridge built not of politics or power, but of memory and the terrible mercy of recognition. The night deepened around the citadel like the closing hand of a god. The stars of Nerethus burned cold beyond the palace spires, their light breaking on the tall windows that looked down upon a city woven from glass and memory. The queen did not sleep. She hadn't in years. Instead, she sat in her private chamber, her armor half removed, the remnants of war and ceremony lying silent around her. The candlelight flickered across her pale skin, painting her face in shades of steel and sorrow. The fire inside her chest had dulled since the human's confession. She had imagined hatred would be enough to sustain her forever. But now, with his words echoing through her mind, hatred seemed small, too thin to hold the weight of what she remembered. His eyes haunted her. The same shade, the same earnest, unbearable grief that she'd seen once before on Virith Prime, when she'd pulled her daughter's body from the ruins and looked up into the face of a human soldier frozen by what he'd done. She closed her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. Ira, she murmured, the name she had not spoken aloud in decades. He saw you. Outside, the citadel hummed softly. The power conduits pulsed like veins beneath the marble floors, carrying energy drawn from the planet's molten core. The night was quiet, but the silence was never pure here. It always carried echoes of past lives, of promises broken. She rose and moved toward the window. From there, she could see the lower quarters, where the human envoy slept under guard. His room was small but warm, a courtesy she had given without understanding why. She touched the glass, her reflection merging with the distant lights. What are you, Elias Ward? She asked quietly. Monster or mirror? Far below, in his quarters, Elias lay awake as well. The bed was comfortable, but his mind was not. The queen's face lingered behind his eyelids. The shock when she'd seen his eyes, the tremor in her voice when she spoke her daughter's name. He had not expected to live past that confession, yet somehow he had. That frightened him more than death ever had. He rose and paced the room. The guards outside were silent but alert. He could feel their presence like a heartbeat through the wall. He looked out the narrow window at the alien sky, the twin moons drifting in slow orbit. Everything here shimmered with order and power, but beneath it, he sensed the same fragility he'd seen on every world. Beauty that survived because it refused not to. A knock came softly at the door. Enter, he said. The door slid open, and a figure stepped through. One of the queen's attendants, her armor ceremonial, her posture deferential. The queen requests your presence, she said. He blinked. At this hour? At once, she replied. Come unarmed. I wasn't planning otherwise, he said, pulling on his coat. The corridors were empty as they walked. Golden light traced the walls like veins, illuminating carved sigils that whispered faint heat. When the doors of the private chamber opened, he saw her, standing in the glow of suspended lanterns, her crown set aside, her expression unreadable. Captain, she said softly, you do not sleep. Neither do you, he replied. Her gaze flickered, amusement barely ghosting across her lips. No, dreams offer nothing but ghosts. She gestured toward the opposite chair. Sit. He obeyed, though cautiously. You summoned me, your majesty. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes tracing his face as if searching for proof that he was real. I have questions, she said, and I am tired of hearing lies. Then I'll give you the truth, he said. Even if it hurts. She inclined her head slightly. Very well. On Virith Prime, after the bombardment. Why did you stay? He hesitated. Because I couldn't move. Her brows arched. Fear. Guilt, he said. I watched what I'd done. I told my men to hold fire, but it was too late. The targeting algorithms ignored the cease order. When the flames cleared, I saw her. A child. Your child, maybe. His voice faltered. She wasn't afraid of me. Not even then. The Queen's eyes glistened faintly, though her tone remained measured. She was brave. Braver than her mother. He swallowed. She looked at me like she understood. Like she forgave me before I even knew what I'd done. The Queen looked away, her hands tightening on the edge of the table. Forgiveness is a myth, she said. A comfort for those who do not wish to remember. Maybe, he said, but sometimes remembering is all we have. She turned to him again, her eyes sharp. You speak of memory as if it redeems you. It doesn't, he said. It just keeps me human. They sat in silence for a long while. The flicker of the lanterns painted shifting patterns on the walls, gold and blue merging like breath and flame. Finally, she said, My council wants you gone. I figured. They believe your presence weakens me. Does it? Her lips curved faintly. Not yet. He smiled. I'll take that as a good sign. You mistake tolerance for trust, she said, and trust for peace. We are not the same, Captain Ward. No, he said, but we could be. She studied him, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing. You are persistent, she said quietly. That's what they say about us, he replied. Humans don't give up, even when we should. Perhaps that is why your species survives, she murmured. He leaned forward slightly. And yours? Her eyes met his. We endure, she said simply. Not because we believe in something better, but because we refuse to vanish. Maybe that's all belief really is, he said softly. Something in her expression changed. Some invisible line shifting between disdain and curiosity. You speak as though you've seen the end of worlds, she said. I have, he replied. More than one. She rose, moving toward the window, her back to him. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? A conqueror. And what do you see now? He asked. She hesitated. A contradiction. He stood slowly, joining her by the window. The city shimmered beneath them, its spires glowing like fireflies trapped in crystal. Maybe that's what peace is, he said. A contradiction that refuses to break. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, the wall between them felt thin, porous, fragile, like glass under pressure. You think peace can exist between our kinds? She asked. I think it already does, he said. She turned toward him fully, her face illuminated by the light. You presume much, human. Maybe, he said, but when you looked at me today, you remembered something. Someone. And that means there's more to us than you wanted to believe. Her expression froze, the air between them tense with unspoken things. Careful, Captain, she whispered. You walk on sacred ground. Then maybe it's time someone did, he said. Her voice was barely a breath. You remind me of him. He frowned. Who? She hesitated. Ira's father. He was human too. The revelation hit him like gravity reversing. That's not possible, he said. Our worlds hadn't. We met long before the war, she interrupted softly. Before either of us had armies. Before there was reason to hate. He stared at her, searching for disbelief and finding none. Then your daughter was half human, she said. A secret I buried the moment the bombs fell. The weight of her words pressed down between them. Why tell me now? He asked. Because when I saw your eyes, she said. I saw his. The room fell utterly silent. Even the hum of the power conduits seemed to fade. Elias struggled for words. You think I'm him? No, she said. He's long dead. But whatever the flame left of him, it burns in you. He didn't know what to say. I didn't come here to replace him, he said quietly. Then why are you here? She asked. He looked at her, his expression raw. Because I couldn't live knowing that the last thing we did was destroy what we could have understood. Her eyes shimmered with a brightness that had nothing to do with light. Understanding will not undo what's been done. Maybe not, he said, but it can stop what comes next. She turned away again, but her voice trembled. You speak as though the galaxy still listens. It will, he said, if you speak first. She smiled faintly. You think I hold that kind of power? I think you always have, he said. She closed her eyes. You are dangerous, Elias Ward. Why? Because you make me believe. The air between them seemed to hum. Neither moved. Then, finally, she whispered, leave, before I forget why I spared you. He hesitated but nodded. As you wish, Your Majesty. He turned toward the door, but her voice stopped him. Captain. He looked back. Her eyes glowed faintly in the half-dark. When the dawn comes, meet me in the Hall of Memory. He frowned. Why? Because there are truths even I am not certain of, she said softly. And perhaps, Captain, you deserve to see them. He studied her for a moment, then inclined his head. I'll be there. When he was gone, she stood alone again, staring out at the twin moons. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, half shadow, half flame. She raised a hand to her face, touching the faint line of moisture that had escaped her control. Ira, she whispered again, perhaps your forgiveness found another way. And below, in the quiet of the guest quarters, Elias lay awake until dawn, wondering what kind of truth could shake a queen who had already lost everything. The dawn broke over Nerethus in silence. No trumpets, no ceremony, only the slow unfurling of light across a sky that had seen too many wars. The twin suns rose through veils of amber mist, casting shifting shadows through the citadel's spires. In the great hall of memory, where the walls themselves whispered with the voices of the past, the queen waited. The hall was ancient, carved before the wars, before even her bloodline had learned to rule. Its ceilings stretched high into shadow, where ribbons of suspended light danced in quiet patterns. Around the edges stood statues of former monarchs, each carved from obsidian and streaked with veins of silver. They did not merely watch. They remembered. This was where all Zyrian rulers faced the truth of their reigns. Queen Aurelice stood at the center, her hands clasped behind her back, her armor reflecting the dawn's pale glow. When she heard footsteps approach, she did not turn immediately. She knew the rhythm already. The human walked with purpose but no arrogance. The sound of a man who had learned humility the hard way. Captain Ward, she said as he entered. You are prompt. Your messenger didn't exactly sound optional, Elias replied. He stopped a few paces behind her, his gaze lifting to the statues. So this is where your people keep their history. This is where our history keeps us, she said. Every ruler of ZYR has stood here and let the flame judge them. It shows not what we wish to remember, but what refuses to be forgotten. Elias took a step closer, his voice quiet. And what does it show you? She turned to face him then, her expression unreadable. We will see, she said softly. The flame responds to both presence and truth. It will reveal what binds us, or what still divides. She gestured toward the center of the hall. A circular platform waited there, inlaid with sigils that shimmered faintly like veins of molten silver. Above it, a suspended orb of light pulsed slowly, its glow ebbing like a heartbeat. That's it, he asked. Looks smaller than I expected. Do not mistake size for power, she said. The smallest star still burns worlds. He approached the platform, feeling the hum of energy beneath his boots. You sure it's safe? No, she said. He gave a wry smile. Didn't think so. She moved to stand beside him, her proximity both disarming and electric. When it begins, do not fight what you see. The flame shows what binds through memory. Pain, joy, guilt. It makes no distinction. Sounds familiar, he said. She extended her hand, and for a moment he hesitated before taking it. Her fingers were cold but steady, her touch a strange comfort. The flame above them flared, casting the hall in shifting light. "Ready?" she asked. "Not even close," he said. The orb descended, its light expanding until it surrounded them both. The floor beneath them vanished. Sound vanished. Even gravity felt distant. For a moment they were nowhere and everywhere. Then the world unfolded. He was standing on Virith Prime again, but it was not memory, it was living reconstruction. The air burned with smoke, the ground cracked and bleeding light. The sky was red, filled with the falling fire of orbital bombardment. He felt the weight of his armor, the sting of heat on his face, the voice of his lieutenant shouting orders through the comms. But this time he wasn't alone. The queen stood beside him, her own armor younger, less ornate, her eyes wide with horror. She turned slowly, her gaze falling on the same sight that had haunted him for years. A child clutching a fallen woman amid the wreckage. The queen's breath caught. "Ira," she whispered. The child turned. Her eyes, those silver-ringed eyes, met both of theirs. For an instant, she seemed to exist outside time, a bridge between what was and what might have been. The air vibrated with unspoken understanding. The flame had bound their memories together, forcing them to witness not as enemies, but as one. Elias fell to his knees, trembling. "I tried to stop it," he said, his voice breaking. "The targeting systems locked. I didn't mean." The queen knelt beside him, her hand hovering above the ghost of her daughter's face. "You think intention absolves you?" she said softly. "No," he whispered, "but it's all I have." The child's image flickered, fading into light. The sound of the bombardment slowed, the fire dimming until only silence remained. The queen stood, her expression unreadable. "The flame has no mercy," she said. "Only memory." He rose slowly, his hands shaking. "Then why show us this?" "Because truth is not punishment," she said. "It is choice." The light shifted again. The burning world dissolved into another scene, one neither recognized at first. They stood in a vast chamber lined with stars, surrounded by silhouettes of humans and Zyrians, signing the first peace accords. The queen frowned. "This hasn't happened yet." Elias exhaled. "Then maybe it's showing what could." They watched as the two species exchanged symbols of alliance. The same flame sigil burned into banners behind them. The image flickered like a fragile heartbeat, fading and brightening. "The future," she murmured. "It's not fixed." "No," he said. "It never was." The light began to fade, the hall returning around them. When their feet touched solid ground again, the air was heavy, the silence deafening. The flame above them pulsed one last time and dimmed. Elias turned to her. "So?" Her gaze was distant, her voice low. "So, you saw what I saw?" He nodded. "Yeah. And yet you still stand here." "Where else would I go?" he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "The flame has judged us both. And it did not destroy us," she said. "That is answer enough." She began to walk toward the exit, her steps slow but certain. Elias followed. "What now?" he asked. She stopped at the threshold. "Now we see if memory can be mercy." They stepped into the dawn. The air outside was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. The queen's advisors waited at the base of the steps, their faces pale with unease. "Your Majesty," one began. "We felt the surge. What did the flame reveal?" She looked at them, her expression unreadable. "The truth," she said, "and the cost of ignoring it." They exchanged uncertain glances, but said nothing more. Elias stood silently beside her, the light of morning catching the faint glimmer of his eyes, the same hue that had once condemned a world, now reflected in the gaze of its ruler. That day, the queen called for a gathering unlike any before. Not just her council, but the emissaries of other worlds, the remnants of those who had survived humanity's wars and her own. When the great hall filled again, the same place where they had first met in hostility, she addressed them with a calm that silenced even her fiercest critics. "Once we believed peace was weakness," she said. "We believed vengeance was the only justice. but vengeance devours the hand that feeds it. The flame has shown us that memory, not hatred, binds survival. The murmurs grew. One elder stepped forward, his voice heavy with disapproval. You speak as though the human is your equal. She turned her gaze upon him, cold and precise. He stood in the fire and lived, she said. Can any of you say the same? Silence fell again. Elias said nothing, letting her words speak for both of them. When the council dispersed, she remained behind. The hall was quiet now, the echoes of dissent fading into stillness. You realize, Elias said quietly, you just made yourself a target. She smiled faintly. A ruler without enemies is not a ruler worth remembering. He studied her, then said, You didn't have to defend me. I didn't, she said. I defended the truth. You just happened to be standing beside it. They shared a rare, quiet laugh. For the first time, it didn't sound foreign. But peace is never born without tremors. Later that night, as the twin moons rose again, a shadow moved through the citadel's lower corridors. An assassin, a zealot still loyal to the doctrine of the old wars, slipped past the guards with a silent blade of plasma. His orders were clear. Strike the queen before the treaty could be signed. Elias found her first. The sound of breaking glass and the hum of a power blade drew him toward her chambers. He burst through the door just as the assassin lunged. Time fractured. The queen turned, startled. The blade arced toward her heart. Elias moved without thought. The strike hit him instead. The sound it made was almost gentle, a soft crack of energy meeting flesh. He fell to one knee, the blade's light fading from his chest. The assassin recoiled as guards poured in, tackling him to the ground. The queen caught Elias before he fell completely, her arms strong but trembling. No, she whispered. Not again. He looked up at her, pain flickering in his eyes. Guess I failed your test after all. Silence, she said, her voice breaking. You will not die here. He smiled faintly. I already did. On Virith. Her grip tightened. No, she said again, desperate. You will not take his death from me too. The guards dragged the assassin away. The hall filled with noise, shouted orders, footsteps, panic. But all she could hear was the slowing rhythm of his breath. He lifted a shaking hand, touching her face. Now you remember, he whispered. Her tears fell silently onto his armor. I never forgot. The light in his eyes dimmed, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The queen held him long after the medics arrived. When they finally pried him from her grasp, her expression was hollow, her crown forgotten on the floor. That night, the flame in the Hall of Memory burned blue again, and somewhere between the stars, where time and grief lost their meaning, the image of a child with silver eyes flickered once more, smiling, as if to say that forgiveness had finally found its way home. The citadel was wrapped in mourning. The fires that had once burned with pride now dimmed to a low, uncertain glow, and even the air felt heavy with grief. Word of the attack spread faster than light. Across the 12 systems of the Zyrian Dominion, messages of fury and confusion poured in. Some demanded vengeance. Others feared the fragile truce was already broken. But the queen said nothing. Queen Aurelice had not left her chambers since the night of the assassination attempt. The medics had taken Elias's body to the Hall of Flame for preservation, at her command. She had not allowed him to be taken off-world, not yet. He stays, she had said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Until I decide what he died for. She sat now beside the stasis vessel, its glass lit with a gentle blue glow. Inside, he looked as if he were merely sleeping. The wound had closed, the medic's technology sealing it seamlessly, though no light returned to his chest. His hand rested over the burn on his armor, the mark of the blade that had stopped his heart. Always in the way, she murmured, voice trembling between anger and sorrow. Even in death. Her reflection shimmered on the vessel's surface, twin images of a queen and her ghost. You were supposed to live, human. You were supposed to prove it could be done. The door behind her slid open. General Kale, her oldest advisor, entered with slow, deliberate steps. His armor bore the marks of battle, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing. "The council demands your presence. The humans call for investigation. Some demand blood." She didn't turn. They would find blood easily enough. But will it bring him back? Kale hesitated. No. But it might keep war from finding us again. She looked up sharply. War will find us whether we seek it or not. The general's voice softened. He died protecting you. That must mean something. It means everything, she whispered. And nothing at all. Kale studied her for a moment, then lowered his head. Your Majesty. The flame has changed color again. Her eyes flickered. Show me. He led her to the Hall of Memory. The air inside felt different, alive, charged. The great orb that had once burned gold now glowed deep azure, swirling like a storm contained. She approached slowly, her hand hovering near the light. It reacts to his presence, she murmured. Even now. The priests say it has never done this, Kale said. They call it a sign. She turned to him, her voice cold. A sign of what? They believe the flame recognized him, that it claimed him as one of its own. She stared into the orb. He was never one of us. Kale hesitated, then said softly, perhaps that was why it chose him. She dismissed him with a gesture. Alone again, she stood before the living fire and whispered, if there is truth in you, show me what remains. The flame pulsed. Light enveloped her vision, and suddenly she was standing in darkness lit by flickers of memory. Elias appeared before her. Not the corpse she had wept over, but the man she had known, alive, steady, with that maddening calm in his voice. You shouldn't be here, he said. She reached for him instinctively, but her hand passed through light. You're gone. Maybe not all of me, he said. The flame shows echoes. Maybe that's all a soul is. Her voice trembled. Why did you save me? He smiled faintly. Because you needed to live more than I did. Fool, she whispered. You were supposed to prove humanity could change, not die like all the others. He stepped closer, though she knew it wasn't real. Maybe that's what change looks like. Doing the right thing when no one's watching. Her breath caught. They will tear each other apart for this. The humans, my council, they'll blame, they'll fight. Everything we built will burn. Then don't let it, he said simply. I don't have your stubbornness, she said. Yes, you do, he replied. You just call it rule. The light began to fade. Wait, she said, reaching out. Don't go. His voice softened. You already know what to do, or Elise. You just don't believe you can. Then he was gone. The flame dimmed, leaving her alone once more in the silent hall. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she whispered, You always were impossible. The next morning, she appeared before the council. The chamber was tense, filled with advisors, military officers, and human delegates patched in by hologram. The air pulsed with fear disguised as order. The attack was not human in origin, she said without preamble. The assassin was Zyrian, one of our own. Let that truth burn through every rumor. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Kale stood at her side, silent but firm. We can no longer hide behind vengeance, she continued. Not after what he gave us. A human envoy's image flickered into view. Your Majesty, Earth mourns with you. Captain Ward was. She cut him off gently. He was a bridge between worlds. And now I intend to finish what he started. Kale stepped forward. Your Majesty, are you suggesting? Yes, she said. A treaty not of convenience, but of consequence. The humans and Zyrians will share the flame. Its power, its memory, its judgment. No more secrets between us. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Impossible, an elder hissed. The flame belongs to the bloodline. The flame belongs to truth, she said sharply. And truth doesn't recognize species. The silence that followed was absolute. When the council adjourned, Kale approached her privately. You risk everything for a dead man's dream. She looked at him, her expression soft but resolute. Then let that be the dream that saves the living. Over the next weeks, the citadel transformed. The Hall of Memory was opened to human scientists and diplomats for the first time in history. Together, they studied the flame, decoding its energy patterns, learning its language of light. For every doubt, a new discovery emerged. Shared neural resonance between species, mirrored emotional frequencies, even fragments of memory embedded in energy signatures. Each night, the Queen returned to the stasis chamber. She spoke to Elias as though he could still hear her. "They are trying, you know," she would say softly. "Your people, my people. They build bridges from equations and faith. You'd probably find it beautiful." On the 21st night, the flame changed again. Its pulse matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. The medics were summoned in panic. "Your Majesty," one said breathlessly, "the humans' readings are changing." "What?" she demanded. They led her to the chamber. Inside the vessel, faint light was spreading from Elias's chest, tracing through his veins like liquid fire. His body convulsed once, violently. The monitors spiked. "He's alive," someone whispered. "No," the Queen said, stepping closer. "The flame. It's speaking through him." The light intensified, flooding the room. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Elias gasped. A raw, ragged sound of air returning to lungs that had forgotten its weight. His eyes opened. They were the same silver blue as the flame. The room erupted into chaos. The medics rushed forward, but the Queen held up her hand. "Leave us," she said. Her voice shook only slightly. When they were alone, she knelt beside him. His breathing was shallow, but steady. "You should be dead," she whispered. "Probably am," he croaked, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. "You?" She struggled for words. "You touched the flame." He looked at her with a faint glimmer of confusion and awe. "It didn't burn me this time." Her hand hovered above his chest. "It chose you." He blinked, weak but lucid. "That's bad news for your priests." She almost laughed, the sound breaking through her tears. "You stubborn fool. Missed me?" he murmured. She pressed her forehead against his, her voice trembling. "You died, Elias." "Yeah," he whispered. "Didn't like it much." When the medics returned hours later, they found the Queen sitting beside him, her eyes red, her composure cracked but unbroken. "He lives," she said simply. "And so does the Covenant." Word spread like wildfire. Across both worlds, the story became legend overnight. The human who had been judged by the sacred flame and returned. Some called it a miracle, others called it blasphemy. But for the first time, humans and Zyrians prayed to the same light. Elias's recovery was slow but relentless. The flame had left its mark, not just on his body, but in the subtle shift of his perception. He could sense things now, emotions as flickers of warmth, truth as vibration in the air. When he asked the Queen about it, she smiled faintly. "The flame sees through you now," she said. "And you're okay with that?" he asked. "I've made peace with stranger things," she said softly. As weeks passed, peace talks resumed. Human and Zyrian leaders met under the shared symbol of the flame. Old wounds reopened, but they were being cleaned, not deepened. And through it all, Elias stood beside her. Not as a soldier, not as an envoy, but as proof. One night, beneath the stars of Nerethus, they stood again in the Hall of Memory. The flame burned calm now, its light soft and steady. "Do you believe it's really over?" he asked quietly. "No," she said. "But it's begun again, properly this time." He smiled faintly. "You ever think this would happen?" Her gaze softened. "At first, I didn't even recognize you. And now," she looked up at him, the corner of her lips curving. "Now, I remember everything." Outside, the first dawn of a united age began to rise. The twin suns caught the edges of the citadel, setting its towers ablaze with gold. For the first time in memory, the galaxy was not holding its breath, it was breathing again. The new dawn rose over Nerethus with a stillness the galaxy had never known. The twin suns spread their light across rebuilt towers and restored bridges, reflecting on the molten rivers that wound through the city like living veins. The air carried the scent of renewal, metal cooled by rain, smoke washed away by light. For the first time in centuries, no alarms echoed through the citadel. The war banners had been lowered and sealed in crystal vaults, their colors preserved not as reminders of victory, but as warnings of what peace had cost. Elias stood on the upper terrace, his body still stiff from the long recovery. The flame's touch had not only revived him, it had remade him. The faint luminescent veins beneath his skin glowed softly when the suns rose, fading again when darkness fell. The medics said it was residual energy. The priests whispered that it was something far greater. But to him, it simply felt like memory, the flame refusing to forget. He leaned on the balcony railing, watching the city below stir to life. Human engineers moved beside Zyrian artisans, rebuilding structures in perfect rhythm. The sound of laughter, genuine, not forced, drifted from the market districts. Felt unreal. He'd spent years walking through smoke and ruin, always waiting for the next collapse. Now, the silence unnerved him almost as much as gunfire once had. Footsteps approached softly behind him. "You still don't trust the quiet," said the queen. He turned to see her standing there, the sunlight threading through her silver hair. She no longer wore the armor that had made her look untouchable. Instead, she wore a flowing garment of deep indigo, the sigils of her house embroidered in faint gold. Without her crown, she seemed human, or perhaps something beyond either species. "Quiet's a luxury," he said. "You learn not to take it for granted." She joined him at the railing, her gaze following his. "They're learning to build without fear," she said softly. "That may be the hardest lesson of all." "People always rebuild," he said. "We just usually repeat the mistakes along with it." She smiled faintly. "And yet you came back." "I had to see it," he said, "to believe it was real." Her eyes flickered toward him, the light catching in their silver rings. "Do you believe it now?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally do." They stood in silence for a while, the breeze carrying the sound of distant voices. The citadel's upper gardens had been replanted since the attack. Vines of living crystal now wrapped around the marble columns, each one glowing with a pulse that echoed faintly with the rhythm of the flame. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "It's alive," she replied. "Everything the flame touches remembers." The plants here were grown from soil mixed with its ashes. "They'll outlive us both." He smiled faintly. "Guess that means we did something right." She turned to face him. "You still don't understand what you are, do you?" He raised an eyebrow. "A man who got lucky twice?" Her expression softened. "The flame chose you. That has never happened. Not in all our history. I didn't ask it to. It doesn't ask for permission," she said. "It sees truth and binds it." He exhaled slowly. "So what does that make me?" She looked at him with quiet certainty. "A bridge between what was and what might be." He tried to laugh but couldn't. "Bridges get walked on, you know? Or crossed," she countered gently. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them looked away. There was no distance left, no throne, no chains of duty, no ghosts of the war that had once defined them. Only two survivors who had built something fragile and infinite between them. Later that day, the grand convocation began. Delegates from across both empires gathered in the rebuilt Hall of Memory. The flame had been moved to the center, its light steady and calm, no longer wild as it once had been. The queen stood beside it, her presence regal but serene, while Elias took his place at her side, not as her emissary, not as her guard, but as her equal. The chamber fell silent as she began to speak. "For generations we ruled by fear," she said. "We believed strength was born from conquest. But conquest only teaches us how to bury what we do not understand. Today we choose differently. Today we remember." Her voice carried through the hall, filling every corner with its quiet conviction. The flame that once judged us as enemies now binds us as one. It reminds us that truth is not an empire, nor a weapon, but a light we must learn to share. May it guide us when memory fades, and when pride returns. Elias stepped forward then, addressing both species. We can't undo what's been done, he said, but we can decide what we build from it. The flame doesn't separate us anymore. Connects us, not through blood or belief, but through what we choose to remember, and what we choose not to repeat. Applause filled the chamber, hesitant at first, then swelling until it became something alive, something whole. For the first time, no side outshouted the other. That night, when the halls emptied and the lights dimmed, Elias found himself drawn back to the flame. He stood before it in silence, the warmth brushing against his skin. It felt alive, curious, as if it recognized him still. You started all this, he murmured. Now what? The light flickered, a single pulse of gold through blue. Oralis's reflection appeared beside him in the flame's glow. Now, she said softly, we keep it alive. He looked at her. And after that? She smiled faintly. Then we rest, and let those who come after decide what we were. He nodded slowly. You think they'll remember? Not as we were, she said, but as we became. They walked through the silent halls together, their footsteps echoing in perfect rhythm. When they reached the terrace again, the stars were beginning to rise. Not the cold, distant lights of an indifferent sky, but new ones. Orbital beacons marking the shared colonies of their alliance. The galaxy was learning, however slowly, to breathe again. Months passed. Trade flourished between the two peoples, and the flame became a symbol of unity replicated in outposts across the stars. Children, human and Zyrian both, were taught of the war not as a triumph or tragedy, but as the beginning of understanding. The queen remained the steady heart of it all, ruling with wisdom tempered by loss, and Elias became her voice among the colonies, the living bridge between those who once swore to destroy each other. But time, as always, moved forward. Years later, under a twilight sky streaked with gold, Elias stood once more in the Hall of Memory. His hair was silver now, his face lined with the long peace he had helped forge. The flame burned steady before him, unchanged. He smiled faintly. You kept your promise, he murmured. Behind him, a familiar voice said, So did you. He turned to see her standing there, Uniged, her eyes calm and knowing. You came, he said. I always come, she replied. When the flame calls. He chuckled softly. Still bossy, even after all these years. She stepped closer. Still alive, against all odds. Barely, he said. But I think I've done my part. You've done more than that, she said quietly. You gave meaning to memory. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, When I first came here, I thought you'd kill me. I almost did, she admitted. Why didn't you? She smiled faintly. Because I saw your eyes. He nodded slowly. And what do you see now? Her answer came softly. Peace. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and she took it. The warmth of her touch steadied his breath. You were right, he said. The flame didn't burn us. It changed us. It remembered us, she corrected gently. They stood like that for a long while, the air between them shimmering faintly. Finally, he said, I'm tired. Then rest, she whispered. You've earned it. He smiled, closing his eyes. If I don't wake up, she touched his face. Then I will carry what you proved. The light of the flame flared once more, soft and golden. When it faded, he was gone. Not vanished, but absorbed into its glow, the lines of his form dissolving like breath into dawn. The queen stood alone, her hands still outstretched. You stubborn, impossible human, she whispered. You proved it. The flame pulsed once, a wave of light rippling outward through the citadel, across the city, and into the sky, all over Nerethus and far beyond. People looked up to see the heavens shimmer, the stars aligning for a moment into a spiral of silver and gold. They called it the remembrance, a light that appeared once every century, a living echo of the day two enemies chose understanding over annihilation. Centuries passed. Civilizations rose and fell, but the story endured. And in every retelling, when the Queen of ZYR and the human emissary stood before the sacred flame, it was said that she did not recognize him at first. Not until she saw his eyes and remembered what they had once been, the reflection of her own. And beneath those eternal twin suns, in a hall where memory burned brighter than fire, the flame whispered its truth to all who came after. Peace is not the end of war. It is the courage to see yourself in the enemy and choose to remember anyway.